There's a currency that people often spend recklessly throughout their lives. They give away to those who despise them, to situations that drain them, and to a world designed to consume them. That currency is attention. Because it is given away so freely, it loses its power. The more one reacts, the more one allows others control their focus, and the less control they have over their own life. Imagine how different the world could be if someone began reclaiming that power, choosing to give attention only to what truly matters, to the things and people who bring value. Stoicism teaches that the key to mastering the mind and emotions is the ability to direct attention intentionally. By controlling this, one regains control over peace, energy, and ultimately destiny. In a heated argument, for example, when someone says something triggering, the immediate urge is often to respond, defend, or prove oneself right. But the power of those words lies not in their content, but in the meaning assigned to them and the emotions attached. Reacting stems from the fear of losing dignity, respect, or control. But in truth, the moment a person reacts, they have already surrendered their power to the situation. Stoics understand a simple yet profound lesson. While one cannot control the actions of others, one can always control their response. Real power lies in this response. In moments of tension, when everything within wants to lash out, choosing silence over reaction, calm over chaos, demonstrates a quiet strength. Yet most fail to notice how often they relinquish their power. Consider the trivial arguments, unnecessary criticisms, or false accusations that escalate tensions. Reacting often adds fuel to the fire, making one a part of the chaos. But when someone chooses not to react, when they become the calm in the storm, they break the cycle and regain control of their emotional state. The peace thus created surpasses the fleeting satisfaction of being right in the moment. Many allow others' words or actions to dictate mood and peace of mind. Stoicism does not advocate passivity or indifference, nor becoming a doormat. It teaches discernment, choosing which battles merit engagement and which do not. Not every confrontation requires a response. The strength lies in knowing when to engage and when to let go. Responding with silence, not from inability to speak, but from mastery over one's moment, demonstrates strategic detachment. What people allow to consume their mind shapes their experience. Giving attention to every insult or criticism feeds negativity, but withholding attention from what does not serve one builds resilience. It creates a buffer between oneself and the world. Those who thrive on drama, insults, or manipulation feed on reactions. By refusing to respond, one breaks a cycle, reclaims energy, and takes back control. The Stoics emphasize internal mastery over external validation. One's mind is the most precious possession, and no one should control it without consent. Emotional mastery comes from noticing the urge to react and choosing a different path, unlearning automatic responses, and reclaiming time, focus, and energy. Less reaction means more focus on growth, purpose, and peace of mind. As Marcus Aurelius said, the happiness of life depends on the quality of one's thoughts. Through strategic detachment, silence becomes a tool of strength. People who maintain quiet confidence command respect not through loudness, but through stability, groundedness, and calm. Observing without becoming entangled, mastering oneself, and cultivating inner peace amidst chaos exemplify the Stoic ideal. The art of ignoring is not avoidance. It is engagement on one's own terms, from a place of strength. Silence shifts the power dynamic. By refusing to react, one diminishes the potency of provocation and manipulative behavior. Attention withheld is power reclaimed. Over time, this practice fosters self-discipline, inner peace, and freedom from external control. Reacting to every little disturbance is a waste of energy and time. As Seneca noted, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Directing attention toward what nourishes growth, instead of distractions and drama, strengthens one's internal foundation. Those who practice emotional mastery learn that their worth is defined not by others' opinions, but by alignment with their own values. Toxic or manipulative individuals may seek validation through provocation, but attention withheld removes their influence. The one who masters their reactions becomes the anchor amidst chaos, controlling energy cultivating order, and choosing what truly deserves focus. In daily life, this practice starts small, resisting the urge to react to minor annoyances, observing provocations without engagement, and investing attention purposefully. Over time, life becomes more intentional, peaceful, and focused. By choosing silence over reaction, individuals reclaim their mental space, cultivate self-discipline, and discover freedom, the quiet power that lies in mastering one's own mind. When faced with comments, manipulations, or attempts by friends or colleagues to draw someone into emotional drama, there was a choice to be made: to react or to pause. Those who practice self-mastery learn to take a breath, to step back, and to remain in control. They directed their attention toward their own peace, toward their goals. Over time, this became second nature. They stopped giving energy to what didn't deserve it, stopped feeding unnecessary drama, and began living a life genuinely under their own control. This approach was not manipulation or a game, but a simple truth about human nature. People respected what was scarce. Those who were always available, always reactive, lost the rarity of their presence. By reserving time and energy for what truly mattered, individuals became like rare gems, precious, valued, and intentionally present. Just as limited edition or exclusive experiences are sought after because of their rarity, the careful management of attention conveyed a message. One's energy was not freely available. It had to be earned. Those who mastered this principle treated themselves as precious jewels, allowing only a few to draw near. This did not mean shutting others out or becoming cold, but cultivating discernment. Attention was no longer given to those who disrespected it, but directed toward those who honored it. In this way, the choices of focus reflected character. Carl Jung's insight, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do," became evident. Indiscriminate attention suggested little value, whereas reserved attention demonstrated self-respect and intentionality. Respect, self-respect, respect for time, respect for emotional energy was central. It was not about rudeness or spite, but about understanding that presence should be earned. When individuals acted in this way, they regained control over life and peace. Walking through the world with calm, unaffected by every provocation, became a powerful signal. Observers noticed the self-control, the refusal to be swayed by drama, and respect naturally followed. Those who chose this path were no longer mere participants in chaos. They stood outside it, unshaken, in control. The transformation extended beyond external perception. They stopped seeing themselves as beholden to others' demands or validation, realizing that worth was intrinsic. They no longer felt compelled to be everything for everyone. Withholding attention created space to focus on what truly mattered: personal growth, nourishing relationships, and peace of mind. The practice was challenging at first, especially for those accustomed to constant availability, but with repetition, it became second nature. Less reactive attention led to less stress, more energy, and the recognition of how much energy had previously been spent on the undeserving. With that realization came freedom, from reactive patterns, from external pressure, and toward a deeper peace. The practice of withholding attention did not negate the possibility of connection. Stoic philosophy emphasized that genuine connection was based on mutual respect. Giving energy to those who only took diminished one's own value. By refusing to react to manipulation or provocation, the practitioners shifted the power dynamic. They no longer supplied the emotional response others sought, forcing provocateurs to confront their own behaviors. Carl Jung's idea that irritation from others revealed insights about oneself resonated. By not reacting, the practitioner observed both others and themselves with clarity, maintaining emotional boundaries without unnecessary conflict. As this approach was consistently applied, those who had relied on one's reactions noticed the absence. Attempt to provoke became visible for what they were: manipulative efforts. Rather than frustration, awareness grew. Individuals understood that they controlled their own emotional state. By stopping reactive patterns, they stopped feeding external games, reclaiming power over their attention and energy. Emotional mastery emerged, not through confrontation, but through deliberate choice. the effects extended inward. Practitioners learn to ignore internal distractions, the fears, doubts, and negative self-talk that consume mental energy as much as external drama. Mistakes, worries, and imagined judgments no longer dictated moods. They observed their thoughts without becoming consumed by them, allowing patterns to pass instead of reacting automatically. This formed a foundation of emotional intelligence, clarity, and resilience. Mental clutter diminished, leaving space for focus, growth, and peace. The Stoics recognized that suffering often arose not from external events, but from the stories the mind told itself. Catastrophizing, dwelling on the uncontrollable, and succumbing to imagined fears drained energy unnecessarily. By ignoring these unproductive mental patterns, one could focus on reality, what could be controlled, and what truly mattered. This practice created freedom, the ability to choose thoughts, focus attention, and govern one's inner life. Mental clarity led to emotional stability, independence from external opinions, and a life aligned with values. Finally, mastering the art of ignoring extended the presence in the world. Instead of reacting to every noise, insult, or demand, the individual could navigate life intentionally, choosing what deserved attention. Ignoring was not withdrawal or isolation, but selective engagement. By directing energy where it mattered, one remained fully present without being consumed by external chaos. Attention became a tool of agency, empowering the practitioner to live deliberately, protect peace, and cultivate true inner freedom. He decided what truly mattered and focused on that, refusing to be derailed by anything that did not serve his purpose. By turning away from a need for external validation and investing instead in his own growth, he discovered a power that was unstoppable. He no longer relied on the approval or attention of others to define his worth. Validation came from within. Self-worth was now internal, independent of outside opinions. This awareness was liberating, forming the foundation of his personal strength. By releasing the pursuit of others' approval, he became free to pursue what genuinely mattered. He no longer lived according to the rules and expectations set by the world. Instead, he defined his own path, his own purpose, and his own measure of success. As Carl Jung had said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who one truly is, and that journey began by tuning out external noise and focusing on inner growth. The world was always poised to pull him into chaos. People sought to involve him in drama. Events demanded attention. Distractions tried to divert him from his course. Yet through the deliberate practice of ignoring what was irrelevant, he remained anchored. His attention stayed on his goals, and he resisted the impulse to react to every event around him. Like a stoic emperor in the marketplace of life, he walked unbothered, knowing that his mind, his focus, and ultimately his destiny were under his control. This was not about ignoring life or pretending that everything was perfect. It was about not letting life's chaos dictate emotions or actions. By choosing where to place his attention, he regained control over his inner world. True power lay not in reacting to the external, but in remaining grounded, focused, and unshaken. By stopping the chase for external validation, he reclaimed his energy, his emotions, and his agency, becoming the master of his own destiny, untouchable by outside forces. The practice took time and discipline, but over time, its effects became evident. He noticed greater peace, increased control over his life, and the diminishing influence of external chaos. This did not mean detachment or indifference. Boundaries were simply established. Energy was allocated to personal growth, meaningful relationships, and purpose, while distractions and negativity were ignored. Stoic wisdom reminded him that while the world's events were uncontrollable, his responses were not. By refusing to react impulsively, he reclaimed power and created a life that was authentically his. He imagined his days flowing with clarity and calm, unaffected by arguments, drama, or distractions. Energy was consistently directed toward growth, not wasted on noise or conflict. Ignoring was an act of strength, not apathy. By refusing to engage with negativity, he cultivated space to focus on what truly mattered. He became more proactive, intentional, and deliberate with attention. This skill applied to every domain: managing difficult people, prioritizing time, navigating challenges, all while maintaining inner peace and focus. Gradually, he realized that external validation was unnecessary. Reactions were no longer automatic. Confidence grew quietly, rooted in inner steadiness. The more he practiced, the stronger he became, navigating life with purpose and resilience. True power was internal. By mastering the art of ignoring, he gained freedom, the freedom to live life on his terms, guided by clarity and anchored strength. He recognized the danger of unrestrained emotions. Society had taught him to follow the heart, to trust passions as guides. But the Stoics had long understood that true power arose from mastery over emotion, not submission to it. Emotions could derail, distract, and manipulate. Those who stayed steady while others were ruled by feelings held real power. He observed how emotions dictated actions. Elation turned to despair. Decisions made in haste led to regret. Impulsive choices spiraled into chaos. Recognizing emotion as a reactive force, he learned to step back, gaining perspective. Detachment did not mean suppression, it meant control. By observing emotions without yielding to them, he could act strategically, aligning actions with long-term goals. This transformation required daily practice, awareness of emotional triggers, pausing before responding, and separating feelings from actions became habitual. Emotions became signals, not commands. Through this discipline, he faced challenges with clarity, unclouded by fear, anger, or desire. Walking into any situation, he remained calm, measured, and composed, assessing, thinking, and acting with precision. True power was quiet, steady, and resilient, cultivated through self-control rather than external assertion. Emotional detachment allowed him to navigate life with grace, purpose, and resilience. By controlling reactions, he became the captain of his own ship, unshaken by storms. Each challenge was an opportunity to anchor himself more firmly. With consistent practice, detachment became natural. Responses were deliberate rather than impulsive. The result was freedom. Freedom from reactive patterns, from overthinking, and from the tyranny of the world's chaos. He did not stop feeling. Instead, he learned to prioritize what deserved emotional energy. Decisions were no longer dictated by temporary impulses, but by long-term goals. Fear, anger, and frustration no longer controlled his choices. With clarity, he acted deliberately. Stoic guidance reminded him that while external circumstances were unpredictable, responses remained his domain. By mastering reactions, he mastered life. Through continued practice, he noticed remarkable changes. Decisions became wiser, judgment clearer, and focus sharper. He acted from strength and intention, not fleeting emotions. Emotional mastery was not absence of feeling, but control over it. Freedom, power, and peace emerged from this discipline. With this control, he realized that nothing could derail him. Not fear, not anger, not failure. He became the steady force in a world of chaos, the unshakable presence amidst the storm. The person who mastered emotional detachment became unshakable. The practice was ongoing, demanding time and discipline, but with each step, they grew more centered, focused, and in control. Instead of reacting to the world, they began shaping it. They moved through life with purpose, knowing that true power lay in taking charge of their own mind and actions. Their journey toward emotional detachment began with understanding their own biology. They realized the human brain was wired to react, to feel, to follow impulses, a design optimized for survival, not modern life. Their ancestors had needed rapid responses to threats. But in the present world, these same instincts often became obstacles. Fear no longer protected them from predators. It hindered bold decisions. Anxiety no longer ensured survival. It left them frozen in place. The fight or flight response, once crucial, now obstructed progress. They had to learn to fight against their own biology, to override instinct with intentionality. Fear was acknowledged but not obeyed. Impulses were observed but not acted upon automatically. By doing so, they reclaimed power over their decisions and, ultimately, their life. Emotions became tools to understand themselves, not masters dictating their behavior. With emotional detachment, they could navigate challenges calmly. Instead of reacting to every bump in the road, they analyzed situations with clarity. Decisions were guided by long-term strategy, not fleeting feelings. Over time, this ability became second nature. They acted with intention, not impulse. They were not devoid of feeling. They simply refused to be ruled by emotion. Anger, anxiety, and excitement no longer hijacked their judgment. When faced with conflict, criticism, or fear, they paused, observed, and chose a response aligned with logic and purpose. Emotional turbulence became a signal, not a command. Their prefrontal cortex, once overwhelmed by strong emotions, was now fully engaged, guiding rational, strategic action. They understood that hope, when passive, could be paralyzing. Waiting for circumstances to align or for external validation was futile. The difference between those who succeeded and those who remained stagnant was decisive action. They no longer relied on chance or fortune. They acted. Every choice was deliberate, moving them closer to their goals. In mastering emotional detachment, they became the master pilot of their inner world. Emotions were alarms, not directives. Chaos surrounded them, but they maintained course, responding with precision and calm. They observed feelings without letting them dictate action, separating signal from noise, clarity from impulsive reaction. Through consistent practice, emotional detachment transformed their life. Challenges became opportunities to exercise calm. Setbacks became moments to reinforce resilience, and conflict became tests of patience and strategy. They were no longer tossed by life's storms. They navigated them with purpose. They did not suppress emotion, but used it wisely. They acknowledged anger, fear, and desire while refusing to surrender control. Each deliberate step strengthened their ability to remain grounded. By detaching, they gained freedom, the freedom to act from reason, not impulse, from vision, not reaction. Eventually, they realized the world did not control them. They controlled how they experienced it. Emotional detachment allowed them to make decisions with intention, respond with clarity, and act decisively regardless of external circumstances. They became the architect of their own life, no longer a passenger but the driver, steering toward goals defined by strategy rather than sentiment. By shifting from hope to action, from reaction to intentionality, they unlocked real power. The world's chaos no longer dictated their energy. Each step, no matter how small, was a move toward mastery, independence, and freedom. Emotional detachment was not coldness. It was control, clarity, and strength. It allowed them to navigate life's storms with grace, to act strategically, and to become unshakable. The individual who cultivated emotional detachment began to glide through life's challenges. Their emotions no longer dictated their moves, and they no longer reacted impulsively out of fear, excitement, or frustration. Instead, they approached each situation with calm, calculated precision, choosing responses deliberately. This mastery did not require shutting off their ability to feel. Rather, it demanded control over those feelings and the recognition that emotions are transient, coming and going, while the ability to act with intention remains constant. Through detachment, they gained clarity. Life's chaos no longer overwhelmed them. They could perceive the calm beneath the storm, the clarity amid confusion, and navigate obstacles without being disturbed by every setback or disappointment. They recognized that challenges were not personal attacks or failures, but opportunities. While others panicked or became frustrated, they observed from a distance, analyzing situations with the cool detachment of a strategist. Life became something they navigated with intention, rather than something that happened to them. Opportunities emerged where others saw only threats. Solutions became apparent where others overlooked them. This detachment was not a mere mental exercise. It was a way of life. By releasing the need for constant emotional validation, they stepped into a space of complete control. They stopped being victims of circumstance and began recognizing the influence they could wield over their environment. Purpose guided every movement. unaffected by the distractions around them. They became the observer of the world, and in that observation, they found their power. As Kyung had said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Detaching from emotions and mastering reactions became part of that journey toward becoming their best self, one who acted not according to fleeting feelings, but guided by rational thought and deliberate action. In this space, freedom emerged. Freedom from the whims of emotion, freedom from the need for approval. This freedom conferred unstoppable strength. Their clarity became a sharp edge, allowing them to act with precision in situations where others faltered. As their detachment deepened, they became independent of external validation. They no longer needed success, approval, or recognition to feel fulfilled. By releasing dependency on the world, they effectively gained control over it. This state was not cold or indifferent. It was freedom, untethered, unshaken, and untouchable by the chaos around them. Challenges were met with confidence, knowing they could handle outcomes regardless of circumstance. Achieving this level of detachment required time, patience, and consistent practice. They learned to observe their emotions without letting them dictate actions. Slowly, subtle shifts emerged. They ceased reacting to minor irritations, ignored inconsequential worries, and could endure discomfort without being overwhelmed. Over time, this detachment became second nature. Its power lay not in coldness, but in clarity. Freed from distractions and emotional turbulence, they saw the world as it truly was. While most people reacted blindly to circumstances, they could spot opportunities where others saw only obstacles. They approached life with strength and intention, not impulsivity. Their decisions were guided by rational thinking, not emotional impulses. In mastering this, they became the calm in the storm, the strategist in chaos, steady while others panicked. Life's challenges became exercises in resilience, moments to refine strategy rather than provoke fear. Through emotional detachment, they stopped being reactive and began shaping their own destiny. When engaging in disagreements or arguments, their mastery extended. They recognized that proving themselves right rarely achieved influence. Moments of apparent triumph often left subtle tension, with respect quietly eroding. Human nature often converted the act of asserting correctness into a surrender of control. Real influence emerged not in heated confrontation, but in calm patience, quiet observation, and deliberate engagement. They saw that most arguments were fueled by pride, ego, and the instinct to defend status, not truth. Subtle cues, tightened jaws, paused breaths, tonal shifts, revealed emotional undercurrents. When one person tried to dominate, logic often receded. Yet, by stepping back, releasing the need to prove themselves, they regained control. Observation replaced reaction. Tense exchanges became mirrors, revealing both the other's tendencies and their own patterns. Awareness allowed them to guide discussions deliberately rather than impulsively. Over time, this calm steadiness reshaped interactions. Attempts to provoke were less effective because the usual emotional triggers no longer elicited responses. People began approaching, emerged without provoking defensiveness. Yet arguments can persist when pride is at stake. Retracting a position may threaten identity. Socrates noted, "He is richest who is content with the least, for content is the wealth of nature." Contentment here means reducing compulsion to assert superiority in every exchange. Recognizing pride explains why disputes continue long after factual disagreement has ended. The battle becomes one of self-image, not truth. Addressing emotion first opens the door to dialogue, while reducing unnecessary conflict, rather than seeking to prove correctness. The observer creates space where others no longer feel compelled to fight. This transforms discussions from contests into cooperative exploration. Awareness of pride and validation patterns illuminates triggers in one's own responses, providing opportunities to intervene deliberately. Self-awareness becomes a foundation for influence, acting rather than reacting, guiding rather than dominating, and preserving peace without sacrificing clarity. Once someone feels understood, resistance diminishes naturally. Counterarguments and overwhelming evidence become unnecessary. Calm listening achieves the same goal. Seneca observed, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Defensive arguments squander mental and emotional resources. Focusing on listening, responding thoughtfully, and seeking understanding produces productive, constructive exchanges while preserving relationships. Strategy matters. When self-image is threatened, individuals cling to positions even when internally aware of flaws. Recognizing that the true stakes involve pride rather than facts allows one to respond deliberately. Conversations then become opportunities to maintain stability, clarity, and composure instead of tests of cleverness. Transformation occurs when observation replaces reaction, understanding replaces defense, and guidance replaces proof. Once emotions are acknowledged and pride respected, arguments lose urgency. Listening replaces attack, and words shift from weapons to tools for clarity. Dialogue moves forward without tension, enabling insight to emerge. Subtle power arises from validation before logic, observation before reaction, and awareness before defense. Real influence begins in this quiet discipline. Human beings protect dignity intensely. Perceived threats to public image trigger automatic defense, even among intelligent, rational individuals. Small cues, a tightened jaw, a sharp rebuttal, refusal to meet gaze, alter conversation dynamics profoundly. A single phrase like "you're wrong," however polite, often shifts focus from the subject to self-preservation. Priorities change. Clarity gives way to defense. Yet there is a path that preserves perspective while avoiding conflict. Instead of confrontation, one can gently invite reflection. "I used to see it that way until I noticed something interesting." This frames the exchange as shared discovery rather than superiority. Defensive energy dissipates, and reconsideration becomes possible without threatening pride. Epictetus's wisdom applies. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. By treating disagreement as exploration, dignity is preserved on both sides, steering the conversation toward insight. Patience and empathy do not guarantee resolution. Some cling to positions due to identity. Aggressive attempts to force change often backfire, escalating tension or closing dialogue. Knowing when to redirect focus is crucial. Shifting the topic, inviting broader perspective, or pausing for reflection can preserve possibility. Marcus Aurelius advised, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Preserving relationships and influence often outweighs forcing immediate agreement. Practical methods include aligning with shared values. Rather than negating an idea, acknowledge its merit, intent, or reasoning. Validating purpose diminishes instinctive defense while creating openings for alternative perspectives. Seneca reminded, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Most tension is projected, not actual. By addressing emotion before logic, imagined threats are reduced, enabling genuine understanding. Ultimately, conversational mastery is not about proving others wrong, but cultivating an environment where ideas flow without ego interference. Subtle skill, observation, reflection, prioritizing dignity over immediate victory, transforms disagreements. Patience, empathy, validation, and thoughtful guidance turn conflict into productive exploration rather than destructive confrontation. Conflict, when handled thoughtfully, can preserve relationships, open minds, and allow ideas to integrate quietly over time. With consistent practice, disagreements lose their tendency to escalate, and influence grows naturally without force. Patience, empathy, and understanding become instruments of conversational power, guiding interactions toward insight while safeguarding dignity and respect. In one example, two colleagues become embroiled in a heated discussion over strategy. One insists the plan is too risky, while the other argues it is necessary. Voices rise, interruptions occur, and frustration thickens the air, a scene familiar in offices, families, and among friends. Yet, a single calm question can reset the dynamic. Asking what outcome both parties hope to achieve shifts the focus from ego to purpose. The conversation moves from proving superiority to seeking results. Defensive walls gradually lower because the discussion is no longer about who is right, but about what works best. What initially seemed adversarial transforms into a shared exploration. Marcus Aurelius observed, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." Once perspective shifts, arguments often lose momentum without any concession. Silence, when used intentionally, plays a crucial role. It is not avoidance or submission, but a deliberate choice to let the emotional current settle before introducing reason or guidance. In this space, insight emerges. Conversations are guided not by reactive impulses, but by conscious intention. This practice is particularly effective with those whose pride or emotional investment is high. Instead of attempting to overpower with logic, a pause allows reflection to occur, giving minds time to confront inconsistencies or unexamined motives. Often, the pressure to respond immediately arises from anticipation rather than necessity. Silence gives reality a chance to catch up with expectation. When combined with reframing, silence magnifies influence. A well-timed question can redirect focus, while a pause diffuses tension long enough for rational thought to emerge. Those engaged in discussion begin to think instead of react. Consider instead of oppose. Observers note that influence without force emerges quietly, shaping dialogue through clarity and restraint rather than dominance. By attending to one's own impulses and emotional rhythms of the exchange, the flow of conversation becomes deliberate rather than chaotic. Mastery in dialogue is achieved through subtle guidance. Reframing and strategic pauses create a rhythm where arguments lose momentum and understanding grows. Walls of defense fall naturally when the focus rests on shared objectives instead of personal victory. Participants begin to listen not out of obligation, but because the environment encourages thought over reaction. Disagreements transform into opportunities to recognize ego, emotion, and perception, adjust responses, and guide dialogue toward resolution. Through patience, careful observation, and the art of silence, influence is exercised without confrontation, and interactions shift from conflict to cooperation. Silence, however, is often misunderstood. Many assume remaining quiet signifies weakness, as if failing to respond immediately concedes defeat. In reality, calm silence carries more authority than any flurry of arguments. Instant reaction surrender control to the provocateur. Restraint redirects the energy, altering the dynamic entirely. When one pauses, the conversation's rhythm slows. Others often clarify their statements, soften their tone, or reconsider assumptions. Influence quietly emerges without raised voices or pointed retorts. Silence interrupts conflict cycles by introducing temporal space into exchanges. When parties rush to assert themselves, logic is drowned out by emotion and discussions spiral. A deliberate pause opens a gap for reasoning, reflection, and composure. Marcus Aurelius warned, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it?" By delaying response, the immediate flare of anger is tempered, reducing the chance of lasting damage. Those who master this restraint acquire subtle authority, shaping exchanges through attention rather than aggression. Silence is not emptiness. It is presence, observation, and unspoken power. Yet silence is active, requiring awareness and intention. The Stoics cultivated the ability to pause before reacting, so that reason could follow emotion. Epictetus stated, "There is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worry about things which are beyond the power of our will." In conversation, silence embodies this principle, controlling one's own responses while observing the interplay of words, tone, and subtle cues. With discipline, potential conflicts transform into measured dialogue. Even with mastery, some situations resist resolution. Others cling to identity or pride, refusing to shift regardless of logic or patience. Accepting that some arguments are unwinnable is key to calm influence. Control resides not in forcing agreement, but in managing one's own state of mind. Practitioners of silence protect composure, preserve dignity, and conserve energy. Withdrawing from fruitless disputes is not surrender. It is a deliberate choice to allocate attention to meaningful engagement. Through consistent practice, observers notice the effect. Words carry weight not through volume but measured intention. Attempt to provoke no longer succeed, creating quiet authority earned through composure. Carl Jung noted, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Recognizing emotional currents, pride-driven provocations, and personal triggers allows responses to emerge from awareness rather than reflex. The capacity to withdraw energy strategically transforms potential conflict into opportunity, redirecting effort toward dialogue where patience, reasoning, and engagement yield results. This approach enhances mental clarity. Impulsive reactions trap individuals in cycles of frustration and resentment. Embracing silence provides reflection, strengthens emotional resilience, and aligns responses with principle rather than transient emotion. Aristotle observed, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." In conversation, silence enables self-knowledge, awareness of triggers, recognition of patterns, and deliberate response. The subtle power of silence extends beyond immediate conflicts. Calm, measured individuals gain trust, influence, and credibility. Their presence stabilizes the environment, encourages cooperation, and reduces conflict. Through deliberate restraint, they shape interactions without force, preserving energy for meaningful engagement. Over time, this discipline fosters reputation, authority, and influence. People seek their perspective, present questions rather than disputes, and collaborate rather than compete. Ultimately, mastery of calm, the choice of peace over victory, is a form of strength. Observation, self-control, and prioritization of long-term stability over short-term triumph establish a quiet authority. Presence becomes stabilizing. Composure a tool of influence. Conflict are navigated with reflection, patience, and clarity, transforming potential chaos into an ordered, productive exchange. Silence, intentional restraint, and subtle guidance create a conversational art form that shapes interactions, preserves relationships, and cultivates influence without confrontation, an authority grounded in calm and understanding rather than force. For those who cultivate it, every conversation becomes an opportunity for understanding, every challenge a chance to practice restraint, and every moment of calm a building block for a stronger, wiser self. As these principles take root, a remarkable transformation occurs. People listen more, resist less, and life begins to flow with a rhythm dictated not by chaos or conflict, but by deliberate choice. Many have spent their lives giving away their power unconsciously, reacting to provocations from those undeserving, explaining themselves to those incapable of understanding, allowing words and actions of others to disturb their peace. In doing so, they surrender fragments of their freedom, while the world, indifferent, moves on. Yet the power they seek has always existed within them, quiet, steady, unshakable, waiting to be claimed. Stoic philosophy teaches that nothing external can harm a person unless they allow it. By guarding attention, restraining reactions, and holding peace as sacred, they reclaim an authority that was never meant to leave their hands. True strength manifests in silence. True freedom arises from deliberate choice. Each decision to protect energy, each pause before reacting, each measured moment of restraint constructs a life they were always capable of living. Clarity emerges in these deliberate pauses. Priorities become unmistakable. The distractions that once dictated thought begin to fade. Strength, after all, is not measured by volume or force, but by the calm mastery of oneself. Words spoken, arguments joined, reactions offered, each carries weight. But much of that weight is often misplaced, clogging thoughts, draining energy, tethering one to matters that serve no meaningful purpose. The only understanding that truly matters is their own. Attention becomes currency. Time and focus, once given freely to the unworthy, are lost forever. When spent on pursuits aligned with purpose, however, they compound, enriching both mind and life. Each thoughtless reaction is a withdrawal, each deliberate restraint an investment. When provoked, those who attempt to manipulate energy find it withheld, leaving them uncertain, while the observer's mind remains clear, heart steady, and energy intact. Those who seek to draw others into conflict reveal themselves through their compulsion for attention, drama, and validation. The quiet observer, resisting the pull to react, holds the advantage. Each pause, each withheld word, each measured silence becomes a shield within which they are untouchable. This indifference is not coldness, but a conscious choice to protect one's inner state. Prioritize what matters and act in alignment with enduring values rather than fleeting impulses. Over time, this approach transforms how the world engages with them. Interactions shift from reflexive conflict to thoughtful collaboration. The habitual act of withholding reaction builds resilience, clarity, and composure. Observing provocations without immediate response cultivates insight into both others and the self. Kyung's wisdom resonates here. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. By resisting the urge to defend, explain, or react, they illuminate the contours of their own mind, recognize where energy is spent and which engagements truly matter. Through strategic non-engagement, energy is preserved and autonomy reinforced. Each decision to remain silent asserts control, creating a fortress not a hostility, but a discernment, reflection, and deliberate allocation of attention. The habitual pause becomes a mirror in which others see themselves rather than the observer, and the futility of their manipulations is revealed. Silence and selective presence cultivate influence quietly. Those who show up intentionally, rather than constantly, command attention by virtue of scarcity. The observer's presence becomes currency, valued, deliberate, and influential. By choosing when to engage and when to withhold energy, they dictate the terms of relationships and interactions. They are no longer pulled into every demand, drama, or expectation, but move with purpose, guided by principles rather than reaction. This disciplined approach reshapes perception over time. Calm restraint conveys strength without aggression. Words spoken are heard with care. Actions carry weight because they are measured. By protecting attention as a sacred resource, by investing selectively, they create a life where chaos, provocation, and distraction hold no dominion. The mastery of attention becomes the mastery of life itself. Through sustained practice, silence evolves from a tactic into a state of being. Reactive patterns transform into deliberate choices. Wasted energy becomes preserved strength, and attempts to disrupt, provoke, or manipulate are neutralized. They navigate the world with resilience, clarity, and freedom, the hallmarks of a life led intentionally, guided by reason, and grounded in unshakable inner peace. Those who sought constant attention often depended on it, but when it was withheld, they were forced to confront the true value of what they had hoped to consume. The shift in dynamics was subtle yet undeniable. Power resided in the ability to make one's absence meaningful without explanation. In this space, strategy became visible. When engagement was scarce and deliberate, others adjusted their perception. They valued time spent with this individual more because it was limited, noticed contributions more because they were not ubiquitous. A rhythm emerged, unpredictable to others, and within that unpredictability lay influence. By stepping back intentionally, curiosity, respect, and even longing grew around them. The very act of not being constantly available communicated boundaries and self-respect far more effectively than words ever could. As Carl Jung observed, knowing one's own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of others. Through selective engagement, they observed rather than reacted, maintaining distance that allowed clarity and preserved energy for what was truly meaningful. Strategic withdrawal became a shield against manipulation, overextension, and distraction. Presence became intentional, actions deliberate, focus unbroken. Over time, this practice reshaped how they navigated the world. Validation was no longer sought through constant engagement. Instead, others recognized value through restraint. Each decision to step back became a silent assertion of autonomy. They taught others how to approach them, not by demand, but by merit. Presence and absence intertwined to create influence without effort, respect without coercion, and attention without obligation. As Epictetus advised, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Engagement, energy, and focus were within their power. The constant demands and expectations of others were not. By carefully choosing where and when to invest themselves, action aligned with power, fostering a life guided by intention rather than reaction. Selective presence cultivated scarcity that commanded respect. Effort, value, and boundaries became visible to all. Influence grew, not from assertion, but from discernment. Attention was carefully allocated, and moments of presence carried weight, while withdrawals carried impact. Relationships, interactions, and outcomes were shaped simply through deliberate engagement and intentional absence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Obstacles of expectation and demand were transformed into instruments of influence. Mastery over the rhythm of presence and absence meant that every withdrawal and measured engagement became a strategy that shaped perception, reinforced boundaries, and preserved energy. The art of not being constantly available became an act of control, sovereignty, and inner strength. Understanding the power of selective engagement revealed that absence could wield as much influence as presence. Each interaction was governed by choice, each engagement purposeful, each withdrawal deliberate. Ordinary participation transformed into influence. Chaotic demands became opportunity, and scattered energy crystallized into focused power. Ignoring was more than withdrawal. It was psychological leverage, a preservation of energy that allowed the world to reveal its patterns. By choosing not to respond to drama, criticism, or provocation, those attempting to elicit reactions were met with voids. Their minds raced to fill the silence, while the individual remained calm, focused, and anchored in clarity. Life unfolded untouched by turbulence. Criticism, gossip, and provocation slid past, unable to penetrate the walls of measured attention. This practice did not isolate but positioned them to engage with clarity and purpose, intervening only where energy produced meaningful results. The mind's need for closure worked against manipulators. Silence left others suspended in uncertainty, while clarity and focus were retained. Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." Each moment of non-reaction reaffirmed this principle. Emotional triggers no longer dictated the individual's landscape. Restraint and observation forged autonomy. Calm was claimed intentionally. Each act of ignoring strengthened the architecture of their inner life. By denying projections and provocations, attention remained uninterrupted. Indifference filtered interactions. Only engagements aligned with purpose were met, while the rest passed harmlessly. Patience and practice turned discomfort into mastery, and influence grew as others lost leverage over reactions. Some were erased from their orbit quietly, not through confrontation but through deliberate exclusion. Energy, once siphoned by unworthy presences, was reclaimed for pursuits, relationships, and goals aligned with purpose. Selective disengagement reinforced sovereignty and allowed clarity, focus, and the cultivation of meaningful engagement. Removing the unworthy revealed which relationships and situations deserved attention. As Carl Jung noted, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. This inward focus allowed intentions to thrive, free from the chaos of external demands. Emotional control became armor. Anger, pride, jealousy, and fear were levers others sought to pull, but awareness, self-discipline, and restraint rendered them ineffective. Emotions were tools, not rulers. They could be observed, integrated, and directed without surrendering power. Stoicism taught that disturbances arose not from events, but from judgment. Through measured observation and deliberate restraint, the individual became untouchable, unpredictable to those attempting manipulation. Inaction, too, was wielded with intention. Choosing not to react, not approve, and not to explain became a subtle exercise of authority. By withholding response, true intentions of others were exposed, and composure became a mirror reflecting sovereignty. Calculated inaction allowed energy preservation, strategic observation, and minimal effort with maximum impact. Provocations lost power, and life unfolded as a series of deliberate choices rather than impulsive reactions. Marcus Aurelius once said, "He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe." Through strategic inaction, presence tempered by restraint, and energy preserved for what mattered. The individual cultivated a life governed by intention, insight, and sovereignty. Restraint accumulated into authority, silence into influence, and deliberate pauses into clarity. Mastery was not imposed but lived, a reflection of inner strength, focus, and enduring freedom. Every pause, every choice not to react, every act of restraint built the life they were meant to live. Calm, focused, and untouchable. Energy was protected, presence intentional, and purpose unshakable. Each interaction, each withdrawal, each silent choice became a tool of influence, shaping a life of sovereignty, clarity, and quiet authority.